Everyone, welcome to our very strange virtual Center for Poetry and Poetics poetry reading. So this is the final reading, first virtual reading, but final reading for the academic year 2020, and we will try and wrap things up within an hour and about 15 minutes, an hour and 10 minutes. So there won't be a break between the poets. We will read through for about 60 to 70 minutes with short introductions. So huge welcome to you. And I will be introducing the first half of there is no break, but I will be introducing the first two poets in a second. And Adam Piette will take over after that, and will introduce the second half of the reading. The four poets, including myself, are Adam Piette, Halsey, myself, and we'll finish the evening with Geraldine Monk. And at the very end, if anybody, I will just say a few words about what the plans are for next year, autumn 2020, regarding the series that we run with Adam. So the title of the evening is called The A to Z Machine, and I'm just going to leave it up to Anne to explain why and what that is, but we call it the A to Z machine, a virtual poetry transmitter. And what a poetry transmitter is something that Alan can explain when it's his turn. So the two writers, the two biographies I will be reading now, just right now, after one another, and then you will hear the two readings in one go. We'll start with Adam Piette, who teaches at the University of Sheffield, edits Black Box Manifold with Alex Howell, with contemporary poetries, and is the author of several books and articles on modernism, war studies, mid-century poetry and fiction. He's professor of modern literature at the University of Sheffield, and co-director of the Center for Poetry and Poetics, which is us today, also at the University of Sheffield. And Adam will be actually reading today from his new work of poetry. After whom Alan Halsey will be reading, whose selected poems selected from works between 1988 to 2016 is published by Shearsman, and his latest book Winter Rising, which Alan was going to read from March, in March, or even possibly earlier this year, but because of the various things like strike and coronavirus, it didn't happen. Anyhow, so Winter Rising is a collaboration with Calvin Corcoran, and that book came out recently by Knives, Forks and Spoons. Earlier books include 5 Years Out, The Next of Shelley's Death, Marginalian, which I teach from, and Not Everything Remotely. His edition of Bill Griffiths' collected poems, 1966 to 1996, appeared in 3 volumes from Reality Street. And I like this line, back in the 20th century, which was a long time ago now. So back in the 20th century, he ran the poetry bookshop in Hay on Wye and edited West House books between 1995 and 2011. And currently he is an affiliated poet at the University of Sheffield at the Center for Poetry and Poetics. And I just wanted to say to everyone, thank you for coming. Absolutely amazing and lovely to see so many of you here from various parts of the world, and enjoy the poets.
Okay, I'm starting. I'll just read briefly for 10 minutes poems, brand new poems I've written tracking modernists using epigraphs. The first one, just to throw you into the deep end, starts with a epigraph from Ezra Pound, the Ode pour son sépulcre, which features a little bit of ancient Greek. It's the sirens singing to Ulysses, and they say in Greek, "Idmen gartoi panth oson Troie," meaning we have seen all the suffering endured on the wide plains of Troy. This may go, and this is the epigraph, "Idmen gartoi panth oson Troie," caught in the unstopped ear, giving the rocks small leeway. The chopped seas held him, therefore, that year. This Margot. Siren song, hidden omen, glare, toy, panther, O zany destroyer. Breathe your name into mind's oracle sea. For eyes thirsty for such sweet vocal, but cautious holds I back. On the rocks, no wax, lyrical, reason, snuff, chop logic. So it follows, yea, thereunto all wrens sigh over whispery sea. At Hell's Mouth Cove in Cornwall, death cats sea purr, down fall thee. You fall, yea, 'cause the Dolce Serena knows his story ache, cross all earth and time sea. In wise he not him, and it like she not her, all that doleful year, living and singing so close in ear, singing so close in ear. The next poem's entitled Poppy Red Flux, and it has an epigraph from William Carlos Williams. In the mind, there is a continual play of obscure images which, coming between the eyes and their prey, scenes, pictures on the screen at the movies. Somewhere there appears to be a maladjustment. Poppy Red Flux. A step in at a screen time on that wall. Yea, laugh, if you will. It's the same thing, stranger. Click repeat, then see again, just a blink or two longer. This broken thing fragments under gaze, down that path towards the suburban street. It's just observations, cavils, scare stories, the illusion of gateway, fingers caught in the machinery, light pours from the wound, voices chorale, a bright saw sings of ripping teeth and charred lips. Behind the sun, planets grieve, clouds, clipped wings drifting down softly into the buried lake. Talk to me, Cara, of the heartbeats of the lonely dead. On the truck, the camera sucks the city in, each thing metropolitanized, speed, sucker, technology's kiss, and then there's you at the very edge. Secretions, dreams of the insects, oh, palisades, skies at the back of your skull, little angry cries. You grin at your shadow in the wind-swept glass. Break split, with an epigraph from Wallace Stevens. The quail whistle about us, their spontaneous cries, sweet berries ripen in the wilderness. Break split. Dreamy relapse and feverish core, eyelids closed on flickering scenes, shapes among shades, semaphore, across the weedy lake through mist, as the winter's day yawns over hammocky exfoliations of mind. Ha ha among the strumpets, let frozen fruits fall from you, from hand to greasy grasses, dumb flowers under indifferences of blue. You lose what when you leave? Ah, list, there are you seeds, stewing in his sticky teeth. Spit them out. Sleep by all means. Old Lucy vanishes, with an epigraph from Mina Loy, conjoining in recaptured pulses of light. Old Lucy vanishes. There's a wavy line flowing as light and particle in carnival riot towards candescent end, my only. Ah, Luciferase, plus rictus, shush. There are here photic lactating stars. A light, oh brighten my heart. Flick on, off. We're closing up space-time. Better spend what protons you have. Lanterns soar to fabled skies. Cover me, I'm off. Down that dark way. Presto, buzz. She's Cassandra and articulation energy with an Auden epigraph. The sound behind our back of glaciers carving. Cassandra and articulation energy. It would be the height, pedals shaman's teeth, stir depths and favors blindness as all caves in from captive skies. Clever, the imaging, distorted sonics, bad land karma of the pinched cheeks, famished for a kiss or two before dark. Lighthouse sinking as the patches of vision flip and swerve left to us. Grim clouds quake, eat scrapers, sand down mountains as the sea surge bellows blue in face. Look at your hands, they dripping. Close eyes round the head. Technocrats dance, the Bayesian hates. Take comfort if at all, from the total scene loved once, while the creatures sing their last sweet songs. Bigoteur's dream, epigraph from Lorraine Niedecker, leave me the land, scratch out the land. Bigoteur's dream. Ash crow slash as if across enshadowed eye, cause at their horizon while bright needles burn, unquiet bells tremble at the dark pane, crumple, thudding fall. There's deep stain at back, night's panel sheen and blurry mirror, the face turned other away. This poem, entitled Carnivorous, with a Lynette Roberts epigraph. I follow death which stands on my breath, my heart cut out by the timeless scythe. It's tracking Rousseau, then Thomas Mann, then Seba, Carnivorous. This little island, here's me then alone. On terre, no frère, 2 months all told, enlaced with myself, petrinsularis, fructification games, wild thyme, sandfoin, clover, unquiet heart, affections, waves. Snowbound island of isolation, sanatorium, spring into the dream word, blinding care and the tearing at the child. Death has no dominion here in my breath. Drowse down, drowsing down, snowfall. Temples, installations, death's isle, vision of destruction, wheeling wind. There I thought I was once was. Home, whirring machineries, sounding echo choir, forth and back, Toteninsel. Last Acre, with a William Empson epigraph. The sands are shifting as you walk on. The new is an emptier darkness than the old. Badger gnaws at roots, rabid for the source. teeth slick with desire. A shaft of sunlight falls on the empty glade. Gnats hum and slice bright air above dark pool. Quiet feed bark lice and lichen, dead to all world, bar this here and now. The tethered ring sings its necrotic zone, free for a while of that killing glare. No footfall now along the vernal track. Fern clumps consolidate their inwardness. You see, but are not here as sparrow falls. Take your comfort away, and your largesse, and your antimony. Allow all to fail.
Yeah.
Thank you.
We're not quite sure what to do with the clapping bit.
You need to unmute.
Yeah.
Somebody's sorry. What do I do? Shall I mute myself? That's enough.
Yeah, sounded like aliens to me.
Yeah, I think it was the clapping.
Couldn't cope.
Okay, Alan, are you ready? I wasn't gonna say much, but it's your turn if
Yeah.
you're ready. When you are ready.
What I didn't know, Aggie, was that you were going to ask me to say something about the A to Z machine that you
Yeah.
weren't at all prepared. The A to Z machine is that little graphic which we've used for the advert for this reading. It actually consists of an extraordinary A to Z design that Geraldine and I found in a church in Gozo on the floor. As you walk over the alphabet. Quite extraordinary. And so I had photographs of that. The thing on top is a wrecked satellite dish, which probably won't transmit, which is probably why it's called the the A to Z transmitter, because you ain't going to get much from it, but you do get this very lovely A to Z design. So, yeah, fair enough. We are the A to Z machine.
Sorry to interrupt, but you said it's a self-portrait.
Oh yeah, well that's another thing. Yeah. I've forgotten that. Yeah, it is a self-portrait. Yeah. I am an A to Z machine. Yeah.
That's right.
Why not? So I'm going to read from an unpublished and probably unfinishable book, which I've been writing for about 10 years, and it's called Remarks of Uncertain Consequence. What I'm going to do is I'll read the selection. This is a very small part of the book, but it's selected from various parts of it. I'm going to read the selection straight through as if it were a sequence of self-standing poems. Although in the book, they appear within a much larger network, which cross-references from one to the other, ideas, themes, allusions, historical cruxes, bits of memoir, anecdotes, and what have you. So it's become a kind of labyrinth, which I'm getting to the point where I can't find my way around it either. So when I completely lose myself in it, then that's probably done. It has an epigraph from Ernst Gellner. The conflation and confusion of aims and criteria is the normal and original condition of mankind. The element is as liminal does. That's not a title, that's a one-line poem. Very, very few of these poems do have titles. A sea of wiseacres, holy day of ambiguities. It's for the commercy's sake of them that speak leasing. Psalm 5, verse 6, we've been saved. One reads in order to ask questions. That's Kafka. Query the pronoun. Lost among these entirely strange people. Yea, though I walk in the shadow of the German dentists in Lanzarote, I'll remember Zarathustra and laugh and sing and fear no categorical imperatives. Send him to Coney Hatch, Voltaire's said to have said about this or that theologian. A good idea, but Coney Hatch didn't open as a madhouse until the year of the Great Exhibition. I've searched and searched, but have yet to discover why Coney Hatch had such a reputation as to land this development. I did find the photo captioned renovated building in use as flats, 2008. The watchtower with cupola atop, very 19th century, so post-Voltaire. But consider also that care in the community enabled this latest change of use. Voltaire would sit down on the verge of the North Circular and weep to think of so many theologians let loose. Like a deal of old coves that has nothing to do but idles away time in reading or pottering about a garden. Do you see me? You're listening to the sponge merchant's tale as Mayhew told it. I do believe people reads theirselves silly. He would talk away stunning. That a soul must have a soul, and the soul's soul a soul. The living dead souls of Egypt in infinite regression. Before anyone looked at souls, pictured coming forth by day, and saw they were harpies. What a loss to religion, when God's buttocks and underlings' refusal to drink piss and eat shit were no longer considered scriptural topics. When snakes grew legs, when crocodiles could talk, when sky meant the safest of places and men become swallows sported round the heads of friendly golden baboons. When an eggshell had two spirits, one to guard it before and one after it was cracked, so that every eggshell was two eggshells. Footnotes to poems tend to ramble in much the same way the ghosts of the Napoleonic Wars kept shuffling about in the 20th century. In 1950s playgrounds, Boney was still as big a bogey as Hitler, despite the testicular song to the tune of the Colonel, which in 51 was the first ever sung by a computer. Boney, whose familiar ghost was like Julius Caesar's Alexander the Great. Time's a river which flows backwards in footnotes and underworld. Tell that to Heraclitus, or the Marines as English sailors, mainly men press-ganged to fight Boney, like to say. Although reigns of 60 and more years are a topic these days, no one seems to remember much about George III, except that he lost the American colonies and then his mind. It's said George III looked kindly on that failed assassin who was bound for Bedlam because he foresaw that a straitjacket also awaited him. And while, or perhaps because, the slant of his forehead shown by Gilray suggests something missing, it seems George III even thought he meant well by going out eyeballing peasants. He probably did pinch as many pennies as Peter Pindar could tongue twist in rhyme, but despite the fancy of a king's two bodies, one or both in his case satirically buggered, I doubt he expected so to resurrect as to justify the right to always pack a gun. You must have met him more than once in William Blake's prophecies, the liberty of Wilkes and Paine's common sense. And where would we be without that trio? But allowing that it was an age frantic as ours for news and comment, as constantly repeated as annoying quirks of speech, and not forgetting the quarrels of the Foxes and the Piets, it's still a puzzle why a king should be so often depicted surprised at stool as Farmer George. Perhaps in those privy moments he saw himself manuring his kingdom, and so let's hope that in his purplest visions of futurity, the cause of his indisposition wasn't GM crops. Booksellers loved him. His legacies mostly in the BL and BM. Notes towards a poem for Paul Merchant. Those years I spent driving around England because every small town had 2 or 3 second-hand bookshops with the chance of a snip. I was always in 2 minds, one a memorized road map and the other enhancing the map with an added dimension I wouldn't pretend I could describe, but presenting a land part seen, part imagined, inhabited by unidentified beasts and not entirely human men and women I tried later to picture so flagrantly out of perspective as to disturb some sensitive souls. Now I think again of Mercator, recovering the earth from the charms of the Mappae Mundi, but seeing it still from the lowlands. That centre, even now, of but a little to the west as we see it from here, our familiar projection. It could have been another way, but at the time, not much. Mercator's pen pal D had already envisaged the British Empire and reclamation at last of the once and future king's far-flung domains, now reduced to the relics I'd either seen or imagined when driving around England. Dear Paul, I'm writing a book called Remarks of Uncertain Consequence, so perhaps in such a context, this is the poem and not notes towards. Once I'd have squeezed it till it squealed, but the consequence of that too was uncertain. P.S. Facts and yarns do get skewed when we're writing poems. It seems there was a priest in the court of Norway who told Jacob Noyen that King Arthur found the Northwest Passage. When Mercator read this, he passed it on to D, although D surely knew that Secretary Cromwell had used Geoffrey of Monmouth's tale of Arthur's Imperium to back his master Henry's case against Rome. But however it went, one thing led to another. So although that's addressed to Paul Merchant, on my screen here I got Jesse Glass grinning next to me. My fellow in D studies going back, and John D studies going back, I don't know, more than a decade, 2 decades. And so he'll have a different perspective on that poem than some of you probably. The Thames Barrier didn't show up in George III's visions. And so he drifted into Ballard's dystopia and witnessed the great flood of London, which the Thames Barrier, now winter rains falling in Greenland and 56 lakes are formed beneath the ice cap, will probably not avert. As the books fluttered around in the submerged libraries, George III dived down to snatch as many as he could, but almost certainly flung politicians' memoirs back in the drink. It was always my duty to protect science, he explained when he resurfaced, and I never made a friend of a minister. Easter Sunday service at St. Albans opens with praise for that martyr, without mention that because he needed for his meditation godly silence in the woods, he banished, or worse, the tales don't tell, the unmerciful nightingales. St. Alban would welcome the earlier springs of the 21st century, in which nightingales' wings have shortened to allow for a brood of 3 nestlings, an adaptation which also shortens their chance of surviving migration. With resultant silence, in the remnant woods of southern England, we can expect augmentation of saintly meditation. Thomas the Tank. I heard it when I'd only popped in the kitchen for a fill-up of coffee, was a gravy train. And perhaps unrelatedly, but after all, this happened in an offshore island of Europe in 2018. Daffodils and deadfalls, neighbourly as mushrooms, far-bidden pageants or murmur of myrmidons, lied to but relied on. As we've said ever since, we viewed us from the moon, a blue planet, not to be mistaken for Scleraphia, itself not to be mistaken for the Boys' Club founded in Prague in 1859, but the earthly 16th century paradise also called cocaine, where if you walk out on the luckiest of mornings, along a pastry pavement past barley sugar houses, either a fried pigeon or a grilled goose might, despite the sanctions of universal credit, fly straight into your starving mouth. Why did Yeats, Eliot and Pound pretend in their youth to be old guys? How useful a disguise, how profound a truth. If you're young, discuss. That funny old codger, fussing in his garden about which plant goes where and what counts as a weed, was a poet once. And some days, even now, you'll see him pull not those girls, but a notebook from his pocket. Still scribbling and quibbling, still saying he intends to get it right in the end, face up and phrase perfect. As I walked out one morning, stepping niftily between inauspicious portals and familiar potholes, looking north and south, words not without warning, bereft in disbelief, despite unseasonal warming, froze in my mouth. What? I mean, wait. With too much on your mind, you fell backward? How awkward, untoward, to think too much of the Great War, of what came before and what it led to. Sure, incensed by documentary nonsense, half facts and flaws. As I walked out one morning, wondering what Ford Maddox Ford would make of the new year 2020, its discords, its imperfect vision, fall on his sword or yawning his head off, tuck it under his arm? Would Ford at last be lost for a word or say, fuck that for a game of soldiers? You want my decision? Decayed at the edges, another decade pops up in Nova Johnsonia, where history pledges the same old swan song of hope and glory. So long, swan, so long a dying poor swan, snared by a plot nobody mops up. As I walked up one morning, hoping to meet Sir George Ripley's ghost, a long shot, I grant you, but as I'd been told, it was on that road that he prized from a squelched toad's head that jewel he'd begun transforming into, aren't you surprised? Not the stone of renewal, but fool's gold. The will of the people, perhaps only a wish or multiplicity of whispers complicitly dispersed. I beg to go back to the beginning, the whips and duplicity or wills of the wisp. As I walked out one morning, earlier than anyone's usually about, when methane or another hydrocarbon still flickers on the marsh, when the floods had subsided and the reservoir so parched a drowned village was reborn. Here is the schoolhouse, and there was the steeple, and here out to pillage souvenirs are the people. Watch how they do the shortfall shuffle, wingless as a wine glass at tipping point, although it's no use looking for respite in semblance when only things that can be touched can be vouched for. Bankers falling off their perks as if. Variant not to set aside questions raised by misplaced letters when claiming expenses on a spreadsheet laid out like a patient etherized, etc. If text, test and tab stab, if either dither among newfound typos of ambiguity, how will I understand, how well I understand? Medallions of modality, pugnacious poignancies moving out of tearshot of honeymoon hotels for OTO's homonyms, narcissus narcosis, a kind of attitude sickness, also known as responsibility control, doing us some serious imagery with focused obscurity, concurrus withdrawals, puric tantrums, repercussions neither bidden nor forbidden, wreaked havoc. Variant, an end to austerity, such as one sugared augury after another. Oye, 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 try tripping out on simultaneous stimulants, or remember Rita Hayworth stripping off her glove and play the beam on memes, boys. Variant, buoyant as a buyout clause, sucker for punishment, but please no applause. Prehistory's a comfort in the light, so to speak, of fast radio bursts, maybe neutron stars embracing, if not broadcasts, bouncing home to tell us rats and pigeons will inherit the earth. They've been meek long enough. But as for me, my others out on parallel parole. Correction, patrol. Thanks for listening.
Oh, finished.
Alan, wonderful.
Hey.
Wonderful.
Thank you.
Okay.
Yeah. Yeah, Alan, that was a wonderful, wonderful reading.
Thank you. I've actually agonized over that for the last fortnight. I can forget about it now. Yeah, and you rehearse it one way and you do it the same way as then when you actually do the reading, you do it completely different. So there you go.
Wonderful. And also very funny. It's wonderful to laugh with you.
Yeah, good.
Right, I'm just going to take over now. Just going to mute everyone again. So the actual poets from now on, if they could unmute themselves. Okay, so I'm muting everyone. Just say thanks a lot, Alan. That's fantastic. I'm just moving on to the second half, and I'll be introducing Aggie and Geraldine. Firstly, Aggie or Agnes Lehóczky. She's had full collections published in the UK. Budapest to Babel and Rememberer with Eggbox Publishing in 2008 and 2012. And then two Shearsman collections, Carillonneur, that's in 2014, and Swimming Pool in 2017. She had a pamphlet out with Boiler House in 2017, called Epitaphs and Other Love Letters. and she's co-edited really major and influential, I think, international anthologies. The World Speaking Back to Denise Riley, that was the Boiler House production in 2017. A really big fat book, fantastic to read. And Wretched Strangers, just a sort of an international grouping and gathering of poets. Boiler House in 2018. She's senior lecturer in creative writing and director of the Centre of Poetry and Poetics, which is running this reading here at the University of Sheffield. And she's indefatigable, as I say, director of the Sheffield reading, of poetry readings, which is this is the first virtual form of that which. After Aggie's reading, we'll welcome it doesn't need an introduction, Geraldine Monk. And her poetry has been publishing since the 70s of many collections to her name, including the widely acclaimed Interregnum with Creation Books. Today she'll, since just in the 2000s, she's published Escafeld Hangings, Westhouse Books, Ghosts and Other Sonnets, and Salt in 2008. Lobe, Scarps and Finials, fantastic book from Leaf Press. Also a Knives, Forks and Spoons Press in 2012 published Pendle Witch Words. Parlour Press in the States published They Who Saw the Deep. So it's just a fantastic, rich output there. And she also publishes sort of collective recollections of poetry in transition. There's a Shearsman book called Cusp. She'll be reading this evening Manufractured Moon. That's from a 2001 Westhouse Books collection, Noctivagations. She lives in Sheffield and is affiliated to the Centre of Poetry and Poetics here. And it's just fantastic to have Geraldine and Alan read for us this early evening. But firstly, so over to you, Aggie. Where's Aggie?
You're muted.
All right. Okay.
Oh.
That's fine with me.
Oh.
Can you hear me now?
All right.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. Thank you, Adam, for that introduction, and also thanks for giving me this fabulous order whereby I have to read after Alan Halsey. It's like not a small task at all, but I'll try and do my best here, and obviously after you, Adam, as well. So just like Alan, I've been having nightmares for the past 14 days about this reading, partly because we've never done a virtual reading before, but partly because I've decided to not read from Swimming Pool anymore. I think those who know the book have heard me reading from it enough. So why the nightmare? Because I'm going to be reading from a new text that I've been researching for over the past 2 years now since Swimming Pool, and over the past kind of month or two been writing them up. It's going to be a long project. Will consist of essay type of poems, prose poems, sequences, and this one is most likely is going to be the opening for the book that might come out in 2085, like when I finish it. So this is the first few texts from the first planned sequence, which is still not complete. The book's working title at the moment is Poet's House, The Poet's House, and the sequence the title of this particular sequence is called Lehóczky, which refers back to Epicurus and his idea of the living life in obscurity. I'll try and shrink my reading into 10 minutes, if possible. Lehóczky. On the strangely bright fluorescent green cover of I, Little Asylum, a lyrical account of a childhood spent in a castle disguised as a psychiatric clinic perched somewhere in the Loire Valley in France, written by the daughter of Felix Gattari, is a portrait of Emmanuelle Gattari as a child. The figurine, with her back exposed to the light, as if additionally, so chronologically at post-photo date, it had been cut out and pasted or glued on top of the black and white photograph, as if she were standing a good 100 meters from the facade of La Borde, not quite directly in front, but aslant, as if what she was seeing, i.e. the building, was not aware of being seen by her at all. The psychiatric ward Gattari co-directed from 1951 until 1992 with Jean Horry, an at the time enigmatic, controversial experimental ward operating incognito in which both residents, aka madmen, and the Laborde kids coexisted for many years in some alternative collective symbiosis, which I might picture more like a scene from an unconventional play in what you may call a timeless or extended eternal present and some otherworldly eccentric harmony. Emmanuelle Gattari on the cover photo is turning away from the camera, i.e. from the viewer, photographer, reader, with her face, in fact, her entire body turning towards the walls of the sanatorium, which she believes cannot see her, all the while trusting she remains unseen, staring at the hospital disguised as an old castle, most of which, at the moment of the photo being taken, is bathing in the late summer sunset, while the body of the child Emmanuelle, who is turning her back to you while watching the building at sunset, facing the wall, is partially lit and partially in shade, half of her body concealed, half of the body unconcealed. And because she's hiding her face from this side of her world, staring into the inside of her own, she, from this side of our own world, seems almost faceless. A few pages into the book, the figure of the child Emmanuelle reappears in full light and turns to you with the contours of her body standing almost stiffly upright, tense, gradually motioning toward you. To you, who always through thought you were seeing her while yourself could remain unseen. Emmanuelle's face is now illuminated by the late summer sunset, almost blindingly so. Then she, seemingly artlessly, as if part of her daily routine, enters you, little asylum. Woman by the window is a 1952 Picasso painting framed within a poster I received in 2010 from Socrates. As he said then, some sort of a reward for passing my viva with minor corrections so heroically for the thesis I wrote on the modernist poet Ágnes Nemes Nagy. The thesis was called Poetry, the Geometry of Living Substance, a concept Nemes Nagy borrows, reappropriates from one of Goethe's essays on the correlation between living and abstract, or even spectral entities, suggesting that the order, the form of poems takes shape as unfailingly, almost as violently as the symmetry of living organisms. We just have to pay attention to their regulators, and with all our creative force, we have to work out that structure, the valid one. The retro poster, which frames S frame within frame, a painting within the poster, within the room, within the house, within the poem, i.e. Picasso's Woman at the Window, was a design by UEA Sainsbury Centre from 1999 to promote the centre's exhibition entitled Dreams and Lies, with the typography in which the connective "and" was so faded that the word became almost invisible. Picasso's Woman at the window, from the angle I'm looking at her, is looking by the window, looking out at the world, not quite taking part or half taking part, half hiding, visible and invisible, depending, or so I assume, on how much the woman at the window wishes to reveal or conceal of herself, a choice Hannah Arendt claims of "I will add some sort of self-exile that is entirely and ultimately yours and not mine." At times, the black and white face of this woman in the window disappears and reappears again, depending on the angle of the sun, as well as on Picasso's choice. At that predetermined moment, the outline of the body fractures and, shredding its own origin, morphs into its own obscure double, into the contours of someone else, a stranger, an Eleatic visitor perhaps, who has all the while been waiting for her to join her. Like some multi-headed anonymity, it has two or more of everything, foreheads, pairs of eyes, chins, noses, and while there is one and only body, it seems as if it were multitasking with a multiple presence, one of her standing inside, the other standing outside, and the one vision of the whole figure or face is that of unity, symbiosis of these two seemingly disparate and yet similar movements, which for now I will call the woman's choice of being in two places at once. Later, when you look again, and when I say you, I also mean I, the woman who was standing behind the window has already gone, entered the outside, so she's not so much looking at the outside from the inside, but having been inside for so long, she's now still standing there, just now behind the same glass on the other side, looking back at the same and only glass the woman and the window inside is looking at, not so much looking inside, but looking at the inside with a semi-dreamy gaze in a moment which you may call the moment of recognition, which remains at this point only a promise or a chance. It remains only an intuition of the nameless woman standing at the window, who appears as if for a second she were made of this glass. And finally, in Lisa Robertson's Baudelaire Fractal, there's a passage in which the female dandy author, a fusion of fictional, non-fictional Hazel Brown and auto non-biographical Robertson, as the novel's protagonist, moves to a hotel room in Paris in a basement position near the communal bathroom, and describes her protagonist feeling a sense of uncontrolled freedom, of floating, being unattended, no weight, no companion, some sort of absolute bliss of self-exile, anonymity, and invisibility. The bookmark marking page 33, where you can find this scene, is a bookmark which poet Sarah Crew posted to my university address after a poetry reading. So the bookmark, a postcard I find on page 33 in Robertson's novel, depicts a female warrior or goddess standing in front of the House of Commons, blindfolded with a Roman gladius at her side, pinned on the gate a message, Reform Bill debate men only. It also depicts justice and another message, but I surely am not excluded. On the back under LC Library, what is now called the Women's Library, Sarah sends her love. But to feel excluded, it occurs to me, suggests that one wants to take part from what one is excluded. But I often wonder, in what does one want to take part? Athanatoi. This self-exile, this choice is what Elsewhere Robertson calls the choice of living in the house, or polis, or civic space made of soft architecture, by which I think she means bodies, by which I think she means female bodies, by which I think she means invisible female bodies, or what Anne Boyer might call a life lived, a life, as if it were already an afterlife. Or later on in her book, The Undying, what she might refer to as living this so-called afterlife behind the construction of an imaginary universal weeping wall, designed mostly for women. Or what nature might call living life as some kind of unending survival. Or what I might call remembering someone else's memoir, as if I were not I, but someone else, as if I were not presently present in my house, in my own room. Thank you.
I want to put the clapping in the chat.
Am I on now?
Indeed.
Okay, well, thanks for that, Aggie. That sounds pretty intriguing, and can't wait to hear more about that. So that's something to look forward to when we're all allowed to see each other again. Right, so for me, I'm going to, hello everybody, lovely to see you at a strange distance, but lovely nevertheless. Yes, I'm going to read from Noctivagations, Manufractured Moon from Noctivagations, and this is Noctivagations. It's got stickers on, which means it's my reading copy, so it doesn't come with that. It's a thing of beauty, in no small part, because Glenn Storhog made it one.
I mean, the last people
with much love.
Yes, with much love, as Glenn does all his work with much love. So he helped typeset, well, he did typeset it, and it's on his own paper, and that's why it's such a thing of beauty. But I'm going to read it from this at the moment because it's have to have it big.
Hang on, Geraldine.
Yeah.
I'm just
No.
going to mute everyone, and then just to stop the.
Okay, well, bye bye, everybody. Mute.
And then there you go.
Right.
Yeah.
Am I on now?
Yeah.
Right. I can't quite. Yeah. Okay. So there I am. Are we right? Sorry about this clunky beginning. So yeah. So very many thanks for Glenn. Happy days they were. Manufractured Moon itself, I thought it's something I haven't read very often because it's quite intimate piece. It doesn't really lend itself to a big audience. It was something that was actually commissioned by me and Martin Archer. I can't actually see that Martin's turned up. He thinks he might be going down with a dreaded virus, so just as well he's not popping up here, you know. And for reasons that I can't go into, it just never happened. But it did actually, the writing of it happened. It just never got as far as a radio production. I wrote it in the run-up to the millennium, and its format is a series of emails, which at that time were quite, you know, the cutting edge of communication. And they're written by an alter ego of mine called Getha, and she's unemployed, and she's kind of virtually imprisoned in an urban flat and going, I think, slowly nuts. And she keeps planning on an escape into the countryside. And I think in that sense, I thought it quite chimed with the situation that a lot of us are in at the moment. There's two tropes in this that I'll just gradually. It's so long since we speak to anybody much, we're losing the power of speech, I think. But so bear with me as I try to communicate through the language. But yes, one of the little motifs or tropes is the use of this, if you can see it, which is a calendar. It's a 2000 calendar of Leonardo da Vinci's Last Supper. And that was on my wall at the time, and so that pops up in this. And the other one is a street game. It's a kind of little recurring refrain that keeps coming back. It's of a street game which we used to play when we were kids, when there was not much traffic around, like there isn't at the moment, which is lovely. And it involved everybody lining up on one side of the street and trying to get to the other side of the street. But in the middle of the street was a farmer. And this farmer who was guarding the road was the Golden River, and the farmer was actually preventing us from getting to the other side of the river to feed our father. And we used to do this little rhyme, which was farmer, farmer, may we cross your golden river to take our father's dinner to the mill. And the farmer would, I can't remember what the farmer, he or she, came back. I don't know what the response was, but the idea was that the farmer tried to kill us. And in this respect, it reminded me very much of the Derbyshire police. When the lockdown came, we were all told we were not allowed anymore to go out into the beautiful hills and countryside of Derbyshire. And the Derbyshire police took it a bit too literally, I think, by threatening us with drones and threatening us with arrest. And there was talk of armed police to round up what was basically a load of pensioners going out for their picnics. I mean, it was all a bit overstated, I think. Anyway, so these were the two tropes. I'm not reading the entire thing because I've abridged it. So I'm going to start off with the second email. So subject, hungered and loafing. Fresh air in my city lights. I breathe soft sofas of joy. I cross off the calendar days. I cross them backwards. They meet the ones coming forward and have the time. To have and to hold. To have your cake and yours such a rich homemade cake. Was Sarah Lee a gypsy? My calendar is tucked in a fright in the corner of intricate plastic lace. It's offish white, the Last Supper of 2000. Pale lilac wall weeps through its lacy pores. Christ, he holds a heart-shaped cob against his breast. The positioning is just so. Under the matching lilac shade, standard lamp, the room's a tip with shadow. Lopsided, all the apostles are men. Gether. This is the room that it was written in, and so it kind of references this room, which has got lilac walls. I don't know if you can see them. And over there is a lilac lampshade. And you've seen my calendar. Subject, various sirens, choppers, urban, suburban, and every damned half rhyme. Tonight's like soundtrack to climaxing film of Vietnam, choppers joyriding galore, chasing kids, not a meat muling lamb in sight, dirty maelstrom low throat laughter, multi-directional mono, I feel so Friday night, the furniture just sweats perfume, booze, and half-remembered sex. Oodle, canoodle me home, a lone rangeress with untouched skin, sober as a baristocrat. Farmer, farmer, may we cross your golden river to take our father's dinner? Look forward to seeing you, big bad outside world meets four mad Arcadia. Mustache, Gether. Subject, fallings out. The blind even quivered at the iddy girl, tungsten thin and burning bright, fell out with all the gods in a big way, as only young age can with starry id. They conjured miniature animals for warfare, but they readily scorched and rebelled. The lambs are lit. It turns its face, a shiny teaspoon to the west beam that was always, always Gether. Subject, breakers. All at sea in the city. This ash I wandered streets and turned at every cafe bar. Flew, flew, flew. My shoulders creaked with monkey and blustery, and my guardian angel beating my head hair to a tarnished knot. Puzzle snarled. I felt in my pocket for my tissue and pricked my finger on a cocktail stick shaped like a sword for sticky cherries. Intending to strike at the heart of torment, I picked out a lover's lock and a chunk of Irish sea. My first concerto's in the making. It has no spots. It may yet be amphibian. May it cross your golden river, dark force fisherman. Gether. Subject, rogue rage. All the apostles are men, but one is without a beard and leaning too willowy to Christ. Is it a trick of plastic lace, a sleight of oversight? He looks on close as she, Joan of Arc jumping icon banks, sabotaging sacred narratives. The last immovable tableau. Fear, fire, I fear, will follow. I feel also, I notice by night, my sentences ring oddly and raw. And now the day draws as I do, all in. I will cease to speak as I don't want to startle the birds from sleep. Where do birds sleep? Gether. Subject, discovery. I'm faxing a map of Jupiter. I'm worried about the hotspot. The news flashpoints are now called reports as a soothing strategy for public panic. But study the map if you please. The red seems sulky, not quite how red should act. My friend is close but colourblind. He cannot throw light. He eats green strawberries. Purple doesn't exist. He weeps for wimbres all through the season. To him, the red spots are kiwi. I think he's obsessed with fruit. Maybe he's right. Maybe strawberries glow with envy. Traffic lights make him hungry, not angry. But tell me about the hotspot. Is it out of sorts? May we cross its golden river? My father's dinner is growing cold. Be cool, be Gether. Subject, amber alert. Help. As I write, a stranger is flickering under the leaning street lamp. Out the window, I wish he would choose another. This afternoon, an unseasonable heaviness of air. The city suddenly restless with shifting signs, rubbing undercurrents, jumping lights, pedestrian stage diving pelicans, jaywalkers, ill-mannered starlings, a subdued iridescence on the necks of lame pigeons, discoloured glister of penniless window shoppers, oldsters cheesed, a daylight moon thoroughly fed up all round. I wish he would go, the flickering man. Right soon, Gaffer. Subject, din, neuralgic ringings. Did you reply? Computer curdled, then crashed to obliv. Living here is neither here. Things closed in and amazed, and amazing facts curl up their toes. I lean out the window crooning. All whole roads are up. Diversions to nowhere, everywhere. Heads ache with pneumatic drills. When they found the frozen mammoth, it still had buttercups in its mouth, still edible, floral steaks. It's a time thing. All day industrial rock, all powered by tax, my not work neuralgia, dust bowls of thinks. Are Oman and Yemen female landscape? Curvy dunes sucked dry, strangled gardens, Babylon, pollution. The Americans have just bought God. Pandemonium is the word of the day. Let us pray. Pandemonium, amen. Gaffer. Subject, sodden. Walls grin wetly, and he's there again, up to his knees, newspaper in hand under the sodium ghastly. The apostle is moving. Do I not that like? The apostle sashayed around the Last Supper, a la Rita Hayworth, a la Gilda. My heart jumped in my mouth with respect. Window boxes grew miniature Edens. The sun some moment will stream, break into foxtrot around the table legs. My heart feels like a host. It sticks to my roof. I take it out and put it about. Leavened wildlife everywhere. Gone to earth goes up the cry. I need late night biscuits with salt. Come see me in my urban heaven. Meet flying rats and flagrant saints. In the quiet now, it is quiet now. The apostle is still. Sweet city catnaps before rise, air cleaner and chill fresher. I watch News 24. The Americans have just bought dawn. Stars beyond the streetlights. I lean out my window to croon. Yes, there he is. An unearthly hour, ginger shock, lamp leaning, under the Manufractured Moon. G. Okay then.
Wow.
Thank you. Thank you, everybody. Thanks for turning up.
Hang on.
Great to see you all.
Thank you so much. I'm just gonna say a few words to close the, well, before I close the event, I would like to thank you all for coming. That was absolutely awesome. We might do it again. So a couple of things I wanted to announce, but if you could mute yourself, guys, that would be awesome. What? It's because it's echoing. Someone is echoing, and I'm echoing, and for everyone is echoing, and we're all echoing at the same time, and it's just a big echoing. So what I wanted to say is that we might put together a couple of this sort of thing for 2 events. I'm thinking one of them will be our creative writing journal, Route 57, and the other one, which is a random and ad hoc and impromptu idea, which is not really an ad hoc impromptu idea. Our MA students were going to read as a showcase for the poetry festival which was going to happen last month. But it's not happening, so we might put something together for them. However, next year, and this is the point I'm trying to get at, is that we will continue with the work for the Center for Poetry and Poetics. And I just was trying to find the document in which I've already got lots of poets' names jotted down. But obviously, everything will depend on the situation. So it might be that the opening of the autumn events will be something like this, which actually is quite cool. And then we'll move on to embodied presence, as Denise Riley would call it, the back to the embodied presence practice and routine, and lots of cheap white wine drinking and plastic cups. So thank you very much. I don't know what we are meant to be doing now, Adam.
We could. I'm new to everyone, so big thanks to everybody. But you can say that.
Okay, cool. Thank you so much. So you can continue having a chat. It's slightly strange to have this global chat in my